In the 2010 film Why Did I Get Married Too, Patricia was the therapist.
She knew the signs. She taught them to others.
But when her own child died, she didn't reach for help. She built a fortress.
By the time it crumbled, so did her marriage and everything she thought made her strong.
I'm Heit.
And I'm Cheri.
And you've discovered Axiom Amnesia.
We want to thank all of the supporters who helped to make this video possible. If you want your name to appear alongside these contributors, make a one-time donation of $5 or more via our website at axiom.app, Cash App, or you can head on over to patreon.com/axiomamnesia to enjoy all of the benefits of becoming a monthly subscriber.
So there will be spoilers if you haven't seen this.
I know, because this is like our millionth video on this movie or this series, the Why Did I Get Married series. So we're just assuming that you have seen it. So just to be clear.
Go to the comments if you want us to talk about the play.
Yeah, because we do have it.
We found it.
Yes, and we have also check out the description for a link to the playlist. We've done like 15 videos, I think, 15 or 16 videos on this series, you know, the Why Did I Get Married series. So if you want to check all of those out and make sure you've seen them all, be sure to do so after you finish watching this one. So the idea for this question and video came from a viewer comment. It was actually Dark Light 6 TV. And so the comment says, I honestly don't think there was no going back with the relationship, talking about between Gavin and Patricia, even if nothing happened to Gavin. To this day, I still don't quite understand why Patricia snapped the way she did, because she was the one who was supposed to be a therapist. I understand she needed therapy herself, but I can't get over the fact that her sudden mental breakdown was just another result of Tyler Perry's parrying. And so what we said in response to that, though, was, you know, I think people can actually break, just like we saw Patricia do in this film. That part is realistic. This whole notion reminds me of, from the Bible, Luke chapter 4, verse 23, which is the parable, physician, heal thyself, and that it's referenced, right? And so it's this idea that people want proof and credibility before they're willing to follow your advice. So the physician, or whatever the credible person is, must heal themselves first, tend to the home first, before they can expect other people to follow them. And so Patricia knew this, and this is why she purposely hid the problems in her marriage while pretending to be this marriage goals and guiding all of her friends through these, you know, marriage retreats and whatever, and anybody else who read her books. And herein lies the problem. So, you know, let's talk about that. What's your response to that? Because, you know.
So I think she did become credible. When you write books and stuff, that's your credibility. And if you gain financial success, quote success, then that's your credibility. Yeah, in these times. That's what it takes. It doesn't, because even someone from the outside, how would you know? If I don't know about swimming, how do I know what's successful? That somebody have these awards, maybe, right? Or like music, somebody wins Grammys. That means that they can teach me about music. You know, this is fresh on my mind, but Andre 3000 got nominated for that so-called flute album.
Right.
And it was trash.
But nobody else could have been nominated for that. Like,
yeah, nobody
I can't go and play the flute, having just learned or whatever time he's been playing it for, and make an album and have it be
and have it released and get nominated for Album of the Year. It's absolute trash.
Wow.
And he's trying to do it again with piano, but which is even worse.
They ain't gonna let you do that with the piano.
Yes, they will.
So Lizzo ain't got no album, no Grammy for the flute.
She ain't play a flute. Her instrument was her voice.
Well, but she still plays the flute, right?
Yeah, she plays the flute,
you know,
but his album was just him, whatever, right? But he's doing that with piano, and he's already getting acclaim.
That's just wild.
But somebody tasked me with watching this video, but they said that he, in a commencement speech recently at Berkeley School of Music, said that if he looked at a piano, he couldn't tell you where E was.
Shut up. But yet, but this
Cheri
is just,
can tell you where E is.
I can tell you where E is, and I can't play that well. but I could do a little something here and there, hit a couple chords. But I just so this is the problem I have with it, is that the only reason you're getting the award and accolade is because you are Andre 3000.
Right. But that's my dispute with that sort of a quote, because the outside person can't recognize, right? Some people might listen to it and they're like, yeah, it sounds like all the other so-called jazz that I've heard, right? So he can teach me or my kid this thing.
So
right?
should it be judged by the experts in the field, or should it be judged by
but how can I
who
judge?
enjoy? See,
so the people who give the relationship advice online and stuff now, right? We see what they are. It's all if you like what they say. Like the one dude who was cheating on his wife or whatever. I don't even know all the details. I just hear about these things, right? Then, I don't know. Maybe he looked good and he says good things.
Right. Or things that the audience, his target audience.
Yeah, that's what I meant by good things. Yeah. He says good things. So then that's the credibility, right? You say a few things and then it leaks over to other things, right? So Andre 3000 gets the grace because he was accomplished in one area of music, right? He made good beats. He was a producer and known as one of the best rappers.
I think he's very talented, and I like him in his lane of what he does and where his excellence is. But like when you try to go out of that, this is the problem I have with all form of celebrity, right? It's that because I'm famous for something that has nothing to do with this, you should listen to me about this thing. And it's just like, what?
Right.
I'm listening to you about what you are an expert at. But yet the way, I don't know, maybe this is psychology, right? The way that works is that people just want to listen to you for everything. Why am I going to listen to somebody who's an actor about all of these other things? Yes, they may well know, but they are a student of stuff. They are not like a thought leader, or they shouldn't be a thought leader, although they become that,
I think you need multiple because, all right, so with the music analogy, like you got Patricia, her life or whatever, we see from the outside, she may look successful, right? Her relationship looks successful. But even if it wasn't, like, which we knew, her mental state wasn't where she didn't get the help and all that stuff that she preaches.
Yeah.
That if someone is making pop music, who's not just a super musician, right? They just make some pop music. You could, if you look to them for that help, because you want to be a pop hit star, it might not work out, right? But somebody who hasn't shown that success, but showed proficiency in, I don't know, music theory or something, right? Who can teach you the things where then you can take that into making pop, right? You look at the one who hasn't shown the success, probably could teach you more because they probably can't make a pop song, right? That a lot of people would like and that would, get a lot of attention. Want us to cover your favorite movie ASAP? A one-time contribution of just $50 or more to Axiom Amnesia gets you a deep dive on demand, a 30-minute discussion on any film you choose.
It's easy. Step 1, send $50 via our website, axiom.app, where you can pay via card, Apple Pay, or you can pay directly via Cash App at $Axiom Amnesia. See the links below. Step 2, tell us your movie, email, the name you want to appear on screen, and what kind of deep dive you want. General, a specific character, a particular aspect of the film, etc. Step 3, watch your deep dive on demand with your name listed as executive producer.
Lock in your deep dive on demand today and hurry. Spots are limited.
This offer is not valid for filmmakers or distributors. Subject to availability and terms apply. The thing is, too, if you've experienced some level of success, you have some idea about how it's done. And
which aspect?
That, right? So I can't knock it. But if you tell me exactly what you do, if you say, hey, listen, I don't do much of anything, but I got this person over here and they come up with these beats and they write this lyric and then I listen to those things and then I come up with what I'm going to do, then at least I have some idea about what that process is. But what I think that most people wind up doing is they latch on to this cult of personality, to just the fact that I like a person. There are many people who I may personally like and I enjoy watching, like, even on YouTube, because I watch a lot of YouTube. I love watching their videos, but I would not trust their advice on a bunch of stuff.
Patricia, as a physician, she had the life that people wanted.
Yeah.
I think women like Malik Yoba, right?
I guess.
You guess.
I mean,
okay,
you know,
maybe not. Never mind. So they see she's married.
Okay,
she
yeah.
has money and stuff. I was going to say a good looking husband, but I guess not. So
he's good looking, I guess. You know, everybody's got their thing.
yeah,
Okay.
so he's a good looking, successful man. She's a rich woman who people know and stuff. So it looks like she figured it out and had the life that they want.
So the question is, does the fact that Patricia didn't follow her own advice and that her own house was not straight mean that she is unqualified to offer good, solid advice to other people? And I'm conflicted on that because I feel like she studied, she knew, she understood what it was. And there's here's the thing, right? There are other things that you can know. You can know, hey, if I want to, like for me, a constant struggle is I want to lose a little weight. I know that I need to get my butt out there and be moving my body, right? I know this. That's not bad advice. So if I tell somebody, hey, if you want to lose weight, you need to get out and, go for your daily bike ride or go do these things. That's great advice. But but the fact that I'm have difficulty achieving it doesn't make what I'm saying wrong.
It's theory versus practice, right? So she knows all these things, but that's a whole different aspect of, the human is to put something into practice, right? And some people put stuff into practice without the theory, right?
Yeah.
So she's heavy on the theory. She knows she can tell you what to do. So you may need to go to a different person to give you the motivation or the whatever behavioral aspect of what you should be doing and how to get there and how to achieve that.
Right.
And I think in the role in these such therapists like Patricia is that she has the theory. She can tell you what you need to be doing, and then maybe you go to another expert for actually physically putting that into place, because I think part of it was, y'all need to communicate, you know what I'm saying, and all this stuff. But she wasn't communicating this with her
but she didn't communicate
husband.
Right?
Yeah.
And why wasn't she communicating? What I really feel like is that she was, I heard somebody who described the loss of a child being something like, after this event, it was like they had taken themselves and used Scotch tape to tape all their little pieces back together, but they were very fragile and they couldn't, anything, like if something is taped together with Scotch tape, it's barely holding on, right? It's not solid. It's not like if you use super glue. It's not like if you,
depending on what you're taping together.
Yeah. I mean, but I'm thinking about a piece of paper, right? Because that's what would stick together. It's
Oh
so
man, well that's good. So no, if it's paper, then I think it's strong with Scotch tape. Well, getting off track.
My point is just simply that if you're using something like that and you have all these little tiny pieces, and any little piece, the wind blows hard, a piece could come off, and so because if you are in a fragile state of mind, you will stay away from conversations that could derail you, conversations that could make you be, that could put you on the trajectory to a depression or put you in line where you can't recover. And
so I think, I mentioned theory and practice. I think this is more of the philosophical thing, right? So in your practice of theory or your gaining of theoretical knowledge, there are certain philosophical ideas that are embedded in that, right? So as a therapist, you may have this idea that, yes, if people talk about these things, then it heals. Right? But it could break apart other things. And there's a philosophical idea that if you just put a wall around it and shut it off, it doesn't affect your ability to go on with life and certain things, right? And then possibly weighing those things. Well, and I'm not studied on this. This is just me just off the cuff.
And I would just say to be a lay person, right? Because this is not my area of expertise, although I have been close to people who this was their area of expertise and I was able to glean a lot from them on these things. One thing I realized is that, I personally, like, as things have happened in my life or whatever, I've shared with you guys the loss of my brother when he was murdered and stuff. I did not have the luxury of being able to fall apart at that point in my life. Like, I couldn't, because I still had to be able to take care of myself and make money. If I could have just balled up and laid in my bed for 6 months, I would have done it. You know what I'm saying? Because that's how I felt. But if you know that you have to be functional, and I think about people who, have losses and they have children and they have other type of responsibilities where they cannot let people down, then compartmentalizing issues in order to be able to get up the next morning is something that you see a lot of people do.
So is it that in practice of this medicine, is there like a standard way that tends to be broad, right? Most therapists or psychologists have a certain belief in how these things should be handled. Do you know?
I think there are different schools of thought, and it depends on which one they subscribe to. And
and you don't even know what you're getting when you go to these, right?
So you kind of may have an idea, but I mean, I would think that if you've gone to like I'm sure some people who are practicing therapists in the comments can, weigh in on this. But if you go to a therapist, you get an idea of kind of their approach when you meet with them and you vibe with them and whatever. But, I had gone to this one therapist where, actually, she was a psychiatrist, but because I was like, let me just go straight to the top, But I had gone to her and I was just like, so she was like, there is no rule that you have to go through, therapy, like psychotherapy. Like you can do what you want to do. What you think is going to manage your life the best is what you can do. Now, what's interesting is I think the more evolved people become, the more they are open to mental health services when things are not wrong. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like people have this stigma that, if you go to a psychiatrist, like you're crazy or something is right. But if you listen to these people who are very famous, very accomplished people who have accomplished great things, one thing you always find is that they got some type of therapist or life coach going on.
I'm still a skeptic. You know why?
Why?
Because I'm just like, I don't understand, probably because I haven't been. I don't know how you gonna tell me something or I tell you something and it changes me in a way, right? Like I could listen to 8,000 motivational speeches and stuff and I don't think it affects me. It doesn't motivate me or none of that, right?
I don't think they do.
In that same way.
Yeah.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. Like some people, they go to motivational speakers to change, right? So whatever course, maybe it's like, hey, I'm the type, hey, I go to you, give me the medication.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's like the whole back and forth human interaction thing is just not the same for me unless it's something very practical. Like I was saying, like, hey, if you want to be a DJ, then this is the technique. I need someone to do that for me.
Well, first of all, you're not going to find yourself in a place where you go to a therapist unless you think it's going to work or you're being forced to go. Right?
Right.
And
I will say I've been to like them 12-step people.
Yeah, I mean, but that's still it's all in the same vein.
Yeah,
right?
And that was just like, bro, this is crazy.
But
that's what I thought of it.
I would say, as far as therapy is concerned, when done well, I think you're the one guiding everything. I mean, and I say that from a perspective of like,
yeah, but that's
for
what I don't
people
understand.
who are
Practically
functional,
guiding what? I don't know what's done.
Well, okay, so what I'm saying is people who are functioning, right? Not necessarily people who have, and forgive my way of putting this, but have crashed out to the point that like you need an intervention or something. I'm just saying for people who are functioning, you're like, hey, there's this thing that just keeps coming up in my life, or there's this, I can't seem to get over X, Y, and Z, and I'm coming to this therapist to kind of work out, my issues, right?
Yeah, but I don't know what's done, right? When you say work out, I don't know what's done.
Well, so I don't know. I've been
some talking, right?
So I've been to a few ones. Yeah, so sometimes if it's a thing, if it's a situation, then you go and you say, here's the problem. This is what's going on. And then they can give you approaches and techniques that you can employ to help you cope with those things. So like, I mean, I don't know. One thing is like, hey, I overeat when I get stressed out or something like that. This is just, I didn't go to say this, but they might say, okay, when you're feeling this way, what's going on? What are the things? What are your triggers? What are your,
stuff, yeah.
And then it helps you to recognize the things that will put you in a place that make it difficult for you to control your actions and behaviors.
Yeah. Okay, so I go to work, we have these meetings, and by the time it ends, I'm feeling whatever. So I probably just need to leave at this point of the meeting. Before, you know what I'm saying? That's sort of a thing. All right, I get that now.
or how just not to be triggered, how not to finding other things to focus on, finding other, a big part of it, I think, is what is the self-talk? Because the self-talk is what will ratchet you up or down. What are you saying to yourself as whatever the situation is that occurring? Like, I find if I'm getting myself pissed off or I'm letting myself get triggered or pissed off by something somebody else is doing, it's what I'm saying to myself at the time that's happening that's making things ratchet up. It's I can't believe they did that. I can't, they doing this now? Oh, let me just, right? So if you're not amping yourself, I mean, this is very rudimentary type of what I'm saying. It's not super technical. I'm just saying, so there are ways.
You're not an expert, right? So
I am not an expert. All I can say is from the receiving end of somebody who has been to therapy before.
Yeah.
But
that's why I think a lot of people don't go, because they're like me.
But let me just say
think
this.
Like they're like, I don't get it.
So when I went to this one, when I went to the one therapist or the psychiatrist, she was like, there's no rule. Because I was telling her, I said, I've been to therapy before, but honestly, what I'm not in the mood for at this point in my life is to go to therapy and sit and cry for an hour every week, because then I don't feel good after I'm done. And I don't want to do that. So she was like, ain't no law that says you got to have therapy and be, basically with the, psychotherapy or whatever. There's no law that you have to go through that. Why do you have to do that if that ain't what you want to do? And I said, you're right, girl. And she, so she was like, you could do something different.
So these excursions that Patricia was doing,
right?
Was that, I don't know, was it something to help the relationships of her friends, or was it just something that she would have content for more credibility, for more clients, more money,
I think she wanted to
books?
help her friends, but I think the bigger thing was just establishing herself more, because I think this was an area of her life that she could control. I think this was an area that she could control. So when you feel like stuff is out of control in one area, you'll find that people will, become very hyper obsessive about controlling other things that they can control.
Yeah,
I can't control that I drove this car off a cliff or whatever in the rain and killed my kid.
Yeah, but is it to control her husband too, though, right? So
it's
part
to
of it is
control everything.
Yeah,
it's to control everything.
No, but I'm saying, like, all right, so if I can do this and I'm able to control, then that means that I can have my relationship go the way I want through these, what do they call them? The little vacations they went on.
The retreats?
Yeah, through the retreats. And that's a way of trying to get her marriage to go where she wanted it to go.
I ain't driving up no mountain. Sheila, I told you, don't go driving up no mountain behind no man. Now look at you. But if you like my shirt, go to axiom.app in the merch section and get it.
I think, and then, so this brings up the question of where does she want her marriage to go? What does she want to happen? Okay, so they lost the child. She didn't clearly want to just try to, quote unquote, replace the child, right? She didn't want to try again and have another baby. She was stuck. And I think she wanted her marriage to just stay stuck without her investing anything more into it, without her still loving, being loving toward her husband. She just wanted it to stay where it was, but it was also, he was suffering.
What went wrong was Gavin wanted to
address it, number one.
Yeah, to move things along, right? Yeah. He's like, all right, she was okay where she was, right? But that's the thing when you have, she probably could have functioned well in life without confronting that thing, which therapy probably would have wanted her to do, to confront that thing. But this thing is about marriage. She's with a partner who wasn't the same way. If he was the same way, then they would have been cool, lived out their life. Fine. Quote, fine. But he wanted to confront this thing, and he thought, that's what I would say, he thought that was the way he needed to go forward.
And I think he thought that they could confront it together. Right? Yeah, he was considered, he wanted to maybe try and have another baby. Yeah. He wanted them to be able to move forward together. But the problem was she couldn't move forward at all. And so the question is, could she recognize that she couldn't move forward?
What do you mean move forward? I think moving forward was different for them, right? She didn't need to. She needed to advance in her career. When I say need, it's more of what she wanted.
Saying. Yeah.
Right? His moving forward was confronting this and possibly having more children.
Right.
And because we're putting our personal assessments on what it means to move forward too when we talk about this. If we think that, okay, you need to confront this and have more children to move forward, but you don't need that. She would have been fine, I guess. Maybe not internally, but you know what I'm saying? If it is possible, I believe, that somebody could wall this off and live a nice, fruitful, acceptable life to themselves.
Well, and then I think that's the hard thing, because you also have other people who are different therapist types. Like, I think about Iyanla, right? And I could watch Iyanla's show, Fix My Life or whatever. And some of those like earlier episodes where all kind of manner of crazy traumatic thing had happened in those situations that was nowhere near what my life was. And I could be sitting there crying over these people's lives, because it just is so like, oh my gosh, the pain that these people were in. But Iyanla is from a school of thought where it's like you have to basically rock bottom yourself in order to, like she would say, let yourself cry, let your heart break. That's one thing she would always say. Yeah. Let your heart break. But trust and believe, I'm not a person who thinks that if you let your heart break, you might not come back from that. Right. That's personally what I think.
I think it's this, makes me think of the military, this idea. I don't know about any other branches. I was in the Marines, where they, quote, completely break you down, right, to nothing, to instill what they want to instill in you. Right. So all of your preconceived notions of what life is and all that, and the meaning and what's important, gets basically thrown away so that they can say, all right, this is important. This is important. You should care about this and that, which doesn't work on everybody. But I think that's one way. And I think that's possibly what therapists, psychiatrists can do.
Yeah, I think,
or counselors or whatever, right? Whoever in a role, life coaches, whatever the labels could be. I think it's possible, but I guess, I don't read the studies and stuff. If there's a proven way of it, then I guess it's possible. But that's if somebody's like, hey, I want a whole new mindset. I got a poverty mindset and I want to have wealth. You know what I'm saying? Then like, trying to reprogram like a whole that person.
Thing. That's so
but that's the same thing like this. They lose a child. Hey, I'm struggling with this. I can't even pass by elementary schools or playgrounds, right? Then what I need to do is somehow break you all the way down so that I can build your mind up in a different way of seeing things.
Maybe, and I think that once you get to a certain age, if you have been at least a little bit in touch with your feelings or how you approach life, you should at least know yourself well enough to kind of know what things you're going to cope well with and what things are going to be problematic, right? And I say that because in these situations, there are things where I look at it and I'm just like, yeah, I already know this is going to be a problem for me, so I'm heading it off at the pass. I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z because I know that that's not going to ultimately be healthy for me in the long term. But the idea of building somebody up and, remaking them into whatever it's an interesting concept, but you really have to trust fully the entity, like in your case, the Marines. You have to fully trust to resign yourself to that, because I do think you have to give it up or just be broken. But I don't want to be broken, because I can't guarantee you're going to be able to put me back together.
But you're always there, right?
Yeah.
Because, it's recording this it's close to Memorial Day, right?
Yeah.
And we were watching some stuff on the past wars of our lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And they were giving accounts of these wars.
Yeah.
Right? And I think you made a statement kind of like, you got to do something so that you can... I can't remember
function
the exact
and go
quote.
on to get up the next day.
And I'm like, well, you can't, right? Because they were saying terrible things and doing terrible things. And I'm like, there is no way to come out the other end okay if you're doing those things.
I asked you, I said, because, in some of the accounts and the ideas, it occurs to me that there are people who enjoyed the violent aspects of what, they were wrong.
That's part of the quote, building up. That's what you get built up to do.
So wild.
Right? You get broke down so that you can have the mindset of, my purpose is to kill and destroy.
That's so crazy.
But there's still a piece of you that's the humane part.
But I asked I said, how do you maintain your sanity when the person to your left is that? And you said, you don't. That was your answer.
Yeah.
You don't, or you can't.
Don't,
one
because
or the other.
if you're in that, you know what I'm saying? If you're in that, you still have that piece of humanity that's like, this is wrong, even though you've been programmed to display it. You've been to practice it. But we notice when people get back, they fucked up.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, so the idea of Patricia and so let's go back to this idea of whether or not she should have been giving advice, and could her advice still have been good and effective in spite of her inability to follow her own advice? Does the fact that she did not follow her own advice mean that the advice was not good or not useful to her friends?
I don't think so. I think it could have been good advice.
Yeah.
Right? Even people who aren't learned, and they can give you good advice on something based on just ignorance and pulling it out their ass, right? But that doesn't mean that. There is somewhere possibly an objective truth, right? That, hey, if you do this thing, then this will be the outcome. So I think somebody can state it, and I think she possibly could have, right? And you can do it from observing, right? She observed other people. It's much harder to do the thing on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So, like, one of the things, bringing up music again, I listen to other people's music, and I could tell you, oh, this is this style, this is that and that. But when I make it, I can't necessarily tell you that, what this sound is. Even though I'm listening from the outside too, once it's done, I can't tell you, oh yeah, this kind of sound like a little funk with some jazz infused. You know, I can't do that. I don't know why. I just can't. You know what I'm saying? So it's even worse when it's like I have to assess myself objectively. So yeah, you can look at other people, prescribe whatever, give them any kind of prescription. Yeah, you just do this and that. I see everything that's going wrong in your life and what you need to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and so I think even when you're fully aware, right? Because as Patricia, like, I'm sure she might have been too close to it, kind of like you being too close to the music, right? To really be able to fully assess it. But I think she was aware because she was of some things, because she was making deliberate strides to try to protect that sensitive spot, right? When you have a trauma in an area, you know, you put that bandage on it, you put the brace on it, you put the cast on it, because you don't want things accidentally bumping up against it.
Yeah. Well, you find out what's important. Is the marriage important, or is just your individualism?
Well, the thing is, to have a marriage, you have to survive.
No,
right?
but I'm saying, like, back to what I was saying, she can survive walling all of this off.
But you can't have both. You can't have the marriage and wall it off.
Yeah, in her instance, you can't have them both.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and what about this idea, right? Because ultimately what she did was she tried to protect herself, right? I think she tried to protect herself from the pain of what it is. And, you know, if you've ever interacted with people who are in a lot of emotional pain, I think you see, because it's hard to understand why people might, you know, choose to decide they're done with life, if you understand what I'm saying. But the fact that their emotional pain is so great, that just imagine that something that is so painful to you that you just can't take it anymore. I mean, because there are people who are in that position, right? Then it gives you some insight into what people might do to try to stop that pain or prevent it from going on, like in her case with this loss of this child. And then people are like, oh, you need to grieve, and, you know, but that might look like different things for different people also, you know. People will suggest that, you know, you got to cry it out. You got to have your breakdown. You know, I think about the movie Crooklyn, where, you know, the little girl, Troy, after her mother dies, she's going around and she's doing everything. And then she has the moment where she wakes up in the middle of the night, she hears noise and thinks her parents are arguing. And then it just dawns on her that her mother is never coming back. And she cries and the father holds her. And he's like, I knew you would break soon, that kind of thing. And I'm like, but what if she never broke? What if she never actually broke? It doesn't mean that that trauma is any less. It doesn't mean that she loved her mother any less. It just means that that's just how she coped with what happened.
But that is what it is to be human.
Yeah.
We're just coping with things until the end.
Yeah. I mean, and this is what I really want to say is that I think the problem with all of these trauma, because we talk a lot about trauma and it's trauma porn and we watch slave movies, trauma. But the thing is that if you expect things to, when they heal, to go back to like they were, that's the problem. The problem is an unrealistic expectation of what it looks like on the other side of this mountain that you have to climb.
Yeah.
And what I've found personally, you know, through various losses in my own life is that I have to accept what the reality is, which can be hard, right? If somebody in your family dies, it's hard to accept that they're gone. It's hard to accept that reality. You want to live in a place in your mind where that reality isn't true because it's painful, right? But if you are somehow able to accept that reality, then you're better primed for what the future is going to look like. So then when, you know, let's just say it's apparent when, you know, for me, like I lost my dad, you know, when Father's Day rolls around, I have accepted that reality. It's painful. It's a painful reality. But when Father's Day rolls around, I feel like it helped me to heal to some extent. I'm not completely, you know, to the point where I can say I'm not in the bed all day on Father's Day.
I think it's the idea, you know, that sometimes what we call being desensitized, right, to a thing. If you talk about a traumatic event over and over, to some, it, quote, desensitizes to it, so it doesn't have much effect. Once it happens, right? And early on, it may have a greater effect than later, right? The more you encounter this thing. But then, you know, there's this other extreme that the thing just keeps happening, like, oh, it keeps replaying in my mind, which doesn't desensitize you to this thing. And that's where it probably differs from person to person or whatever the condition is.
And that's where learning yourself, I think, helps to avoid the things that'll play in your mind. You know, and I think I shared with you guys before, like, you know, after when my brother was having it, you know, during his funeral, after he was murdered, I made the decision not to sit directly in front of the casket at the funeral because that wasn't an image I wanted to replay in my mind over and over, because I was replaying all these other traumatic images related to that. But that was one I was like, okay, let's head this off. You can still sit in the front row, but sit to the side so that you're not, you know, for these hours, like imprinting your mind with this stuff. I made that decision. And in that moment, I didn't care what the expectation was, because, you know, the family's supposed to sit in the middle. The family's supposed to... I was like drowning. So I said, you know, this is my life preserver. I have to survive this. I can't rely on my other family members because they're drowning too. Everybody's just trying to survive when something like that happens. So back to Patricia, they both lost a child. It's different than when one spouse has, like, I don't know, a parent pass, and, you know, that person is experiencing the trauma. The other person can be like a support system, and they're traumatized to some degree, but not the same as the person whose a parent it was. But when it's both of you all and everybody's going through it, it is very difficult. But the one thing, as hard and crazy as it might sound, that I realize is that to come to terms with the reality that things are forever changed. It ain't ever going back to the same. You're never going to be happy like you were in that moment when everything was perfect. But you're going to have to find a new kind of happy. You're going to have to make some new memories. You're going to have to, you know, but it's never going to be exactly like that again. And that's hard. That's a hard pill to swallow, but it keeps me from having the setbacks of unrealistic expectations about what the future is going to be, because I think we all would hope that we heal to the point that it doesn't hurt anymore. And I don't think that point ever happens where it doesn't hurt anymore. I don't think there's no such thing as it not hurting when you really think about what you lost when that person isn't here. But that's me. That's my perspective. Some of y'all might have been like, I'm totally healed. That's you. Everybody has their own experience. I'm just saying what worked for me, which maybe is,
Yeah, but see, that's the whole individual thing.
Yeah.
With this couple, you can't do that when you're interacting with other people. And if you live with somebody and stuff, and then your lives are intertwined, basically the same life, then that's where these huge problems come. Even outside of something as significant as what happened to Gavin and Patricia.
Well, it's when you don't understand why people are doing what they're doing and it seems bizarre to you. Or you know what I mean? It's like when you don't understand why they're doing what they're doing. And it can
even
be
if
frustrating.
You do understand, then that may even be more clear.
Well,
that
if you understand, maybe you can give it some grace. But if you don't understand, and I mean, I'm just saying, okay, like not major stuff like this, but like the small things where there's communication issues and stuff like that, right? Where you're trying to communicate a thing and you're not communicating it or whatever, or a person has habits that you don't like. A habit that I have is I'll ask for something, and if it seems like the other person doesn't want to do it, then I'll be like, oh, that's okay. No, don't worry about it. Let's not do it, right? Because there's that piece of me, and this is definitely coming from some, trauma response mess. It's not I'm not going to say it's abnormal. It's not a normal thing probably, but it's my way of not making it hard for the other person and giving them an out, right? So before they can say no, I'm saying, don't worry about it. Don't worry. It's part of that people pleasing, agreeable aspect of my personality that I've had to work really hard on. But to the other person, what it looks like is, didn't you just say you wanted to do blah, blah, blah? And then now you're saying you don't want to do it. Well, what do you want to do? And it's annoying and frustrating, right? When that's the opposite response that you're trying to get from that person. You're trying to make it easy so they won't be annoyed. But now you've annoyed them because you seem like you're being indecisive, when in reality, it's that you don't want to be any extra trouble, no extra burden. You don't want, So yeah, that's a small thing,
Yeah, so it's about importance. What is really important? Because if you're doing these marriage therapy or relationship therapy sorts of things, it's what can each person change, right? And how important is it to them, right? If it's, Heit plays his music too fucking loud when he's playing the piano, right? How important is the music to me? Right?
Yeah.
And how willing am I to change? How important is it to me to change this thing to make whatever relationship works? And any sorts of things.
How important is it to the person who feels it's too loud? Because they're. So I think.
So these
it's a
movies,
lesson in getting along with people. Number one.
But see, these movies, they bring up these huge situations.
Yeah.
That you can't, where the importance is too high for both parties. Right? So we don't get these subtleties and stuff in movies because you're trying to make them very emotional and stuff too, and make these great moral dilemmas. Recent changes here on this platform are making it harder for you to see our latest videos and get notifications. To make sure you don't miss out on anything, we're building our own community, both on our website, axiom.app, and on Patreon, with free and paid options available.
Here's the deal. While you can still watch our videos on YouTube, much of our current catalog and many of our upcoming videos will become unlisted and only accessible to our Patreon, axiom.app, and YouTube channel members. We'll be posting links to these unlisted videos directly on Patreon and axiom.app, so you'll be the first to see them, if you're a member.
If you choose the free Patreon option, you will still get access to some exclusive content like watch parties, where we watch movies together and give the commentary, and other special videos. But premium paid members will get full access to all of our exclusive content. No new account is needed to join our Patreon. Just log in with your existing social media account.
While some of you may find this announcement disappointing, don't worry. We have no plans to leave YouTube at this point. But you guys are our cousins and our tribe, and we refuse to let platform changes tear us apart. So help us stay connected. Join us on Patreon today at patreon.com/axiomamnesia. You can check the links down below or in the comments. Well, what do you think about the idea too that as far as communication and how people approach it, is that every little thing has to get addressed? Like, does everything really have to get addressed? Like, why does every little thing have to get addressed? Okay, and I mean, we just use the age-old, the toilet seat is left of. Why does every little thing have to get addressed? It's just like, is it, and some people will argue however they argue, but I'm just saying.
Okay, so we got this, academia, right?
Yeah.
Those sort of things is that, okay, now I have to tell you how every little thing is an indicator of some terrible ideology, right?
Yeah.
It's the patriarchy, it's misogyny, right? So then the little things is always tied to something way greater than it is. The sum of the parts is greater is way greater than the total, right? And so all the little things mean something way bigger. And I think and it's just getting worse and worse. And as time goes on, that's where we are now, right? So if I dead name a trans person or I use the wrong pronoun, then it is
indicator
bigger
of that
indicator,
you don't,
right? Or even
care.
with the race thing, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not one of these yassa bassa type of folks, but there are times where even me, right? Something little happens. And we just like, oh my God, this is the worst racist person I've ever come across. But it's just, in the grand scheme, it's something small. But we attached it to have greater meaning or value than it actually does.
And even where, people don't mean it, like we were talking about this in the video that we just did on Sinners, where we broke down the scene where the twins are meeting Hogwood, who was the white Klans member, and the fact of how some of the stuff that he was doing that was disrespectful when he met them might have just been current practice that he wasn't even consciously trying to be disrespectful in that particular moment by that thing he was doing, right? But it was, triggering. It was triggering, and the idea of no tolerance. I think that people get to those extreme positions after they've been either taught by somebody who's been offended in these ways for far too long and hasn't spoken up, or they themselves have gone through it.
It's sort of like one thing. Okay, I'm back on names. Like somebody who doesn't have a name in your native tongue, right? And somebody might not try to even pronounce it, right? But it's happened to you so much that this one person does it, and then they're like one of the worst disrespectful people to you because they
attempted to say your name.
No, they didn't. They're just another person.
Yeah.
Like like the one in 1985 who just said, "Man, I don't even know how to say your name, and I ain't gonna even try it." Right? And then, but that's highly offensive, and it points to how basically they don't care about people and all of this. But it's, on the grand scheme of things, it's a small thing. My family pronounced my name wrong for years, and I just didn't even care.
Yeah.
Really.
I have relatives who have had their name mispronounced by other relatives, just for years. That is just the standard of what it is.
Yeah, just whatever.
Oddly, I've had people mispronounce my name for most of my life. I usually get Sherry. And I got to a point where I just stopped correcting people. Whatever.
Yeah.
Unless I have to interact with you regularly, I don't even care. I answer to whatever. It's just,
Yeah. But I think that's the hypersensitivity, but it's about how we weigh the importance of things. And I think sometimes it snowballs because the thing keeps happening, or like you say, you learn it from somebody. They tell you if this happens, then this. Possibly these gurus, right? These online gurus who's telling you what things mean every time it happens.
So what about like in the film where Patricia was like acting like she was fine? People ask her, how are you doing? I'm fine, but everything is falling apart. And, it reminds me of all of the memes that I see where people are like, my life was crap, but I smiled through it. I You know,
as a flex, right?
That's their flex, is that they suffered and came out on the other end after an immense amount of suffering, and nobody knew about it. And, you know, they just are the strong silent type. What do you think about that approach to trauma and bad things?
Yeah. So people don't want you to show it, right? Hey, how are you doing? Man, things are terrible. All right.
I'll holla.
You know, like what? Nobody really want that truth of that. So you're supposed to just say, okay. And, you know, that's just the hypocrisy of all of us. All this going wrong. You didn't show, right? So people get online. Oh, my house is in foreclosure. I'm about to lose my house.
Mm-hmm.
But, oh, we didn't have any idea. They was about what they supposed to do. Just come on and tell everybody. So they going to be judged for that too. You know,
yeah,
it's just,
it's the double-edged sword of judgment, you know. And I say this as a person who tends to be, rather private, I guess. You know, I mean, not like purposely, like I don't tell nobody the left hand or right hand. Not for that reason, where it's like don't let nobody know what you're doing until it's done because people gonna try to sabotage you. Not for that reason, because I feel like that's real paranoid. It's just mostly because it's like a need to know basis.
yeah.
And
why do people need to know what you're doing anyway?
Yeah, but
I really don't care what y'all doing.
And why do they just have questions? Why are you wondering about my life?
Yeah, but if there is a thing, then I may be interested in that. But I guess some people are just interested in what other people doing with.
But when you're close enough, you know what I'm saying? So when you have paid the toll of investing in a person's life, you know what's going on. Because you've talked to them, you've spent the time, you have built that relationship. So the people who know because they have been there and that relationship has been established. If you don't know, it's because we don't know each other like that. You know,
I guess.
That's what I think. And it shouldn't be offensive that a person didn't spew all of their personal business to you, because you know what? I think we all deserve to have somebody who can be our safe place for stuff, where we can just vent or whatever the deal is. Some people have more of a need to vent than others. But,
and it's about the importance. There have been times where, I'm pretty sure it happened to everybody, strangers just come up and they just start telling you everything. One time I found out this dude was a murderer.
Bruh, listen.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, man, I just got out. You know, I did 15 years. I killed a nigga in 1986 or something. I'm like, wait, what, bro? That's
You know what I think? I think that happens to people who are that don't give up a lot about themselves, and so the people who are just dying to tell you stuff, they just keep talking.
Yeah.
You know, so just because you said something doesn't mean I'm gonna be like, yeah, my deep-seated pain is, nah.
Yeah.
I just listen to you. Okay, all right then. You know, and I'm not going to dismiss you, because I mean, I have some empathy that, you know, you clearly need to get this off of your chest. But yeah, same kind of thing where you're just like, okay, I didn't need to know all of that, but I feel for you.
Yeah. If you take public transportation, you're gonna notice that. People just
talking.
Spewing stuff.
Man, so how does that go? He just is like, yeah, and I murdered someone.
Yeah, and I'm like, wait, what? I'm glad you're doing all right. You know, going to work or something. But like, when we think of this, we think of like people get locked up for that and they gone forever, basically.
Yeah.
This dude was next to me.
On the what? On the train?
Yeah, no, at a station.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Train station. He was just next to me, and he's like,
oh
yeah,
my gosh.
just very nonchalantly, I killed a nigga, and I think it was like 87, 88, something like that. And I'm like, dang, what?
It just seems so unbelievable, but at the same time, when you look at the statistics, and, you know, obviously you guys know I'm from Chicago. So, you know, a lot of people is laid up next to some killers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To people who going out and doing all manner, whether you ask or not, that's who you laid up with.
And I guess because you feel free now that you've, quote, served your time.
Oh,
right?
You could
because
just be honest about it. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, because when nothing can happen, you did your that's wild.
Yeah, I'm like, dang, is that in you, or I don't want to know the circumstances, because I don't know what triggers you, right? You know what I'm
just
saying?
Be quiet and nod and grin and get off at your stop. And hope and look and flex forward or backward 10 minutes so you don't be at that same station again. But
Yeah, but you never be able to tell, right? It's sort of like, how you doing? I'm all right. You don't know what this person went through. Like with Patricia, nobody knew. Well, they knew what she went through, but she seemed okay. But the public themselves, the people who she was selling these books and stuff to, she had the perfect life to them.
But see, the people who love you and care about you, who are in tune enough to understand the way to approach a person who has had some issue like that, they will ask, right? And I remember like about my brother, because I didn't want to talk to my like other relatives, my immediate family, because it's like, you don't want to bring up pain for them if they're having an okay day. You know what I'm saying? So for the first few years, we kind of played that game. And then I was like, does it bother you if I say this, or does it bother, and, like if I'm talking to my mom or something and she's like, no, but we would bring it up at different times. But now that it's been, it's been more than a decade, it's been like 13 years, I think, or something like that, so enough time has passed that, we can at least have, touch upon it, and have those discussions. But like, it's, and the reason I keep using this as the example is because I know a lot of you all listening have had things happen, and it doesn't have to be the loss of a person. It could be the loss of something in you, from a disappointment, from a betrayal, from whatever it is, because it's all a form of grieving that happens when, when you lose. It's a loss,
So therapy gets a bad rap because it's associated with negative, right?
Yeah, especially in our community.
Yeah, negative things that happen is when you go and you seek help, right? So I think that's part of it. There's trauma, there's therapy. You know what I'm saying? So,
which is why I was saying, like, so many people who don't have quote unquote anything wrong in particular, they have life coaches,
they have
go see therapists.
Yeah, they have the luxury of not having to. It's sort of like your family physician, right? You get in there, you got the luxury in America of going. But some people, you just go when there's a problem.
Yeah.
Same sort of thing. And
it's like preventative care, right?
Yeah.
Preventative mental health care is, okay, how are you?
Yeah.
Okay,
you know all these
on?
things and what to do when something traumatic or something negative happens.
And we can't, not address like the spiritual aspect of it, because, there are people who historically, the church has taken a lot of the role of therapy, whether it's marriage counseling, like people before they would get married in the church would have to go attend a counseling session. If you're having problems in your marriage and you belong to a church, you're supposed to go talk to the pastor, so these, you had religious counselors, right? Who were supposed to be counseling folks on biblical principles. Now, I've never been to a religious counselor in any of that. But, I'm sure some people in the comments could speak up on, the role of religious counseling. So even if you haven't been to a quote unquote therapist and all of that, life coaches and stuff, I do think that that some of that need, it's not like in our community, we never had anybody who, cared about mental health. I think it just might have been served by different people. And still, whether you go to a professional therapist or not, what do you think people are doing when they're venting to their friends? You having therapy sessions. But the problem is, if you getting your therapy from somebody who don't know what they doing, they be done had you leave your whole family. You done had you leave your husband and everything else. Girl, you need to leave him or she. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, cut them off, right?
Yeah, cut them off.
You getting your therapy from memes and shit.
Yeah, listen, that we're in that era right now.
From AI, random text generators. But
telling you what to do with your life. You've been throwing it all away and regretful after that. But, this is just where we are in 2025. But yet another video on why did I get married and what was going on with Patricia. But my bottom line for Patricia is this. I do not fault her for surviving. But the problem is that she became extremely toxic. And so was her husband. Gavin did too. So I'm not trying to say she was more, but in her pursuit to survive. Whereas I feel Gavin was more Gavin was like, let us survive. And Patricia was like, I have to survive.
Yeah,
but she just couldn't
I think that was him. So I'm gonna go back to what I said. That's my thing. Is that he may have said we, but it still was about what he needed to survive, right?
Yeah.
Versus them, they needed different things, and that's just trouble right there. So I don't know if it was even they could have reconciled that thing.
I know.
But maybe there's a therapist who could have somehow figured it out for them.
I know. And periodically, we like to mess with y'all with the little memes, that especially the one that we made where Patricia was pregnant and on the beach with, with some of Gavin's samples that he had left at the fertility clinic. She just said, okay, Gavin is gone, but I'm going to go ahead and, move forward with a family now. Because we just think of all kinds of scenarios, and the funny thing about these Tyler Perry films, and especially this one, is just the gift that keeps on giving. Because if you start going down a rabbit hole of, well, what if this had happened, you could come up with a whole lot of scenarios. Yep. But as always, we appreciate you all for sticking around for like the bajillionth video on Why Did I Get Married series.
If you made it this far, type prosperity mindset in the comments, so we'll know you're one of the real ones who stick around to the end.
And be sure to check out the video that's on the screen right now and go to axiom.app, where you can see all of our recent videos across all of our channels in one place, and there are links back to watch them here on YouTube.